the Rangers have made a pair of trades that are not that important, still could be interesting, but more importantly, the Rangers have some interest in Jacob deGrom, and apparently the feeling is mutual. We'll get into what all that means and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Today is Thursday, November 10th, which means in a few hours after I'm recording this, the Rangers will have to make their decision on whether or not to extend the qualifying offer to Martin Perez or agree to a multi-year deal. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. Now, let's dispense with the pleasantries first. The semi-important stuff, we'll get into the Jacob deGrom of it all a little bit later on in the show. I'm just foaming at the mouth to talk about how great Jacob deGrom is. But the Rangers, they have made an important move, a couple of important moves. They have traded for Jake Odorizzi from the Braves. He is a right-handed starting pitcher. He is 32 years old. The Rangers also acquired $10 million in cash considerations. They have traded in return Kolby Allard. Here you go. Have Kolby Allard back, your former first-round pick, who the Rangers got for Chris Martin, who showed some promise, but ultimately just absolutely did not pan out here at all. Jake Odorizzi exercised his player option for $12.5 million, which means the Rangers, with that $10 million in cash considerations they got, they only have to pay $2.5 million for who is likely going to be their number 4, maybe number 5 starter, depending on how Dane Dunning does. Now, this is a not flashy, not sexy, but still important move. The Rangers, I thought, heading into this offseason, needed to get 3 starting pitchers. Now, if one of those was retaining Martin Perez, I thought, all right, that's 2. You need a top end of the rotation guy and then someone in the middle to back end to slot in somewhere probably behind John Gray and maybe ahead of Dane Dunning. And the Rangers got that in Jake Odorizzi. Now, he did not have the best season last year, started 22 games, 106 in a third innings, combined for the Houston Astros, where he started the season, pitched 60 of those innings, and then finished the season with the Atlanta Braves. Was not great with the Braves, was just okay with the Astros in 12 starts and 60 innings. With Houston, he had a 3.75 ERA. Everything was just kind of fine. Doesn't walk a whole lot of batters. Gave up a lot more home runs when he moved to Atlanta. It's not really more of a hitter-friendly park. In fact, it might be even less hitter-friendly because they don't have that super-duper insanely short porch in left field. But with Atlanta, he had a 5.24 ERA in 10 starts, 45 and a third innings, not even averaging 5 innings per start. That is a little concerning. And the year before wasn't anything spectacular either. With Houston, he had a 4.21 ERA in 104 and 2/3 innings. Didn't pitch a whole lot in the 2020 season, but was an all-star back in 2019 with Minnesota. That year, he had a 3.51 ERA in 30 starts, 159 innings with 178 strikeouts. That was by far his best strikeout season. He averages 8.4 Ks per 9 in his career. Not a whole lot of strikeout stuff as of late. Just seems like fine, he's out there. I remember Houston being very, very upset whenever they would trot him out there for their, 6th starter or whatever. It felt like they had a 6-man rotation at times and a really, really deep staff. So this guy was at the very bottom end of it. I think he could give the Rangers a lot of depth. He might end up moving into a bullpen role, depending on how fast some of these young arms matriculate up through the system. If Cole Winn can get his crap figured out next year and remember how to not walk everybody, I think he might end up bumping Jake Odorizzi out of the rotation, depending on what happens with the other Cole Reagans. He might end up taking his spot in the rotation. Not entirely sure, but it's good to have some of those depth options because as we saw, the Rangers with what they went into the starting the season with their starting rotation. A lot of those guys didn't work out. Taylor Hearn ended up moving into a bullpen role. Spencer Howard ended up moving into a AAA role, and it just did not go right. They had to call upon Glenn Otto, who did a fine job as the 7th or maybe 8th starter in the rotation, who had to perform like a 4th or 5th starter, had some really decent starts towards the back end. But I think that Glenn Otto is best suited for that role or a late inning relief role where he can just let the stuff fly. I've said this a few times, but I think there's just a lot of importance to having an extreme amount of depth. We saw with the Astros, they had just an insane amount of starting pitching depth. Their number 5 in their rotation probably would have been the Rangers' number 2. Like, having a rotation with that much depth, because injuries happen, especially if the Rangers do get some of these top end guys who are fantastic but have had some injury concerns in the past. Having guys who can come in and slot in, just gobble up some innings, save the bullpen from having to go to do a bullpen game every 5th game, that is a valuable thing. And I think he should be fine. He's fine. He's not going to, blow anybody away. He's not going to throw a bunch of perfect games. He's not going to win a Cy Young. That's fine. You don't need your number 4 or 5 in your rotation to do more than gobble up 5 or 6 innings every 5th day and keep the Rangers in it when he is on the hill. Now, the Rangers have also picked up the team option for Jose Leclerc. I believe that was at $6 million for this year, which before last offseason, I think was the most money that was on the books for anybody this year. Had a fine season in relief, came back after the injury. Had missed 2 seasons, a 2.83 ERA in 47 2/3 innings. Pretty decent strikeout numbers. Walks were, again, about what they were with him, but was fairly consistent in the back end of the pen. Might end up as the Rangers closer out of camp next year. I think he ended up in that role towards the end of the season because we saw a little bit of a slip from Jonathan Hernandez. Both of them really solid guys. Glad to have Jose Leclerc back. I think that is a fine number for a really talented back end of the pen kind of guy. And I think the Rangers can really count on him next year. And that is a good move. Coming up, we're going to talk about another trade the Rangers have made and a little bit of a look at Jacob deGrom. But first, let's word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by SimpliSafe. If you've thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Rangers listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. This is why you'll love it. SimpliSafe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report, a 3rd year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real so you can get priority police response. SimpliSafe is a whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats for your home. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off new SimpliSafe security at simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Now, the Rangers made another trade, even less splashy and less sexy than the Jake Odorizzi trade. I don't know if you can believe it, but the Rangers, they did it. They absolutely did it. They have traded Nick Solak to the Cincinnati Reds for cash considerations. I have a whole video up doing a crossover with my boy Jeff Carr, host of Locked On Reds, talking about the Nick Solak experiment. Just did not work out at all in Texas. That was a really nice, fun first 33 games of his major league career, where you thought, okay, here's a guy who can hit. Here's a guy who's going to do some really nice things, have a really nice on base, going to mash lefties, going to play second or left field or whatever. No. That time is done. He played 35 whole games for the Rangers this year on this team with the absolute turnstile of a left field. 14 different players played left field. He was one of them. I don't know if he was the most underwhelming, but he was definitely up there. A real bummer that it didn't work out, and a huger bummer that Pete Fairbanks has been absolutely awesome for the Rays. But, you live, laugh, love, and you learn. And you learn that you don't trade pitchers to the freaking Tampa Bay Rays because they will end up being amazing and you will look stupid and you will get the bad end of that deal. You can't trade for hitters who they think can't hit lefties, Nathaniel Lowe, but don't trade pitchers to the Rays. That's when you get into trouble. I think I've cracked the system. But yeah, best of luck to Nick Solak elsewhere. I hope that he does finally figure out how to offense. I'm really pissed if he does it somewhere that's not Texas. He had ample time to figure it out in Texas, but it just never really worked out, and that is a huge bummer for everyone involved. But best of luck to him and happy trails. Now, let's get on to the fun stuff. Some tweets. There are GM meetings going on now, so that's why things are happening as opposed to it had been quiet since before this week. And there are some nice tweets from John Morosi, who is with MLB Network. He said, he tweeted this today, actually, this morning at 9:56, November 10th. Sources, Rangers are showing interest in the top of the free agent pitching market and have made contact with the agents for Jacob deGrom, Carlos Rodon, and Kodai Senga. Kodai Senga, I believe. He is a right-handed Japanese pitcher. I will get more into him. I have not talked about him at all. But the rest of the tweet says Texas also faces an imminent qualifying offer decision on Martin Perez. Yeah, we know that. It's looking in all likelihood that the qualifying offer is going to be accepted by Martin Perez. He's going to make $19.6 million this year, and he is going to return to Texas, which would be huge. I wish that it was on a multi-year deal because I think this season was not just an aberration. And if he goes out and does it again, the Rangers are probably going to pay him to stick around. Rangers love him. He loves Texas. Talked about this on yesterday's show, but it just should not be this difficult to retain a guy who wants to be here on a sensible contract. Now, if he's asking for like $30 million a year, then maybe you say, okay, that's a bit much, my guy. You had one really good season. Get off your high horse, but I don't think that's what's happening here. I think the Rangers are just skeptical because it's really difficult to know if this is the new Martin or if he is going to lapse back into what he has been for the last few years, which is kind of a back end of the rotation guy who fell out of Boston's not so great rotation in 2021. But I think this is him turning a corner. I think he's a new pitcher. I don't know if he's going to have a sub-3 ERA and 195 plus innings every year, but I think he's really darn good. And I think that the Rangers are going to look back on not offering him a multi-year deal and end up regretting it after next season. But as long as he comes back, I will be fine. Now let's get into Kodai Senga, who is a right-handed pitcher for the where we go? What was the actual name of the team? The Fukuoka Softball Hawks. Softball? No, Hawk. Just baseball Hawks. Whatever. They are. He is a Japanese-born pitcher who has been pitching in Japan for his entire professional career. He is going to be 30 next year, and he has a pretty impressive track record. He is ready to come to the States. He has 1,340 innings pitched over his professional career in the highest league, the Nippon Professional Baseball League. He has 1,089 innings. Last year, he had a really darn good year with the Hawks. Let's see. His age 29 season, he had a 189 ERA and 148 innings, 159 strikeouts for his career, averages 10.3 strikeouts per nine, 3.5 walks per nine, and has a career ERA in the highest league of 259. That is some pretty solid numbers, but you may be thinking, all right, well, what do I compare that to? Well, let's look at Yu Darvish's numbers before he came over. They are a little bit similar. Darvish was a little bit younger when he decided to come over, but in his, 7 seasons in Nippon Professional Baseball, or I guess all foreign leagues, he had a sub-2 ERA at 199, 1,268 innings, and 1,250 strikeouts, 8.9 strikeouts per nine, which is a little bit lower than Senga, which is surprising because Yu Darvish is such a prolific strikeout pitcher. If you want to look at what Shohei Ohtani did back when he was in Japan, let me go find him as a pitcher. You got to scroll down just a smidge, but in the foreign leagues, he had a 255 ERA, 565 innings, and 10.4 strikeouts per nine, which is actually higher at the major league level, which is kind of interesting. And I think I'm remembering after the little bit of Japanese baseball that I watched and also a little bit of the KBO, those hitters are a little more concerned with strikeouts than major league hitters. They have a little bit more of an old school approach of choking up and putting the ball in play with two strikes. So that kind of might make sense as to why the strikeout numbers are higher for some of these pitchers in the major leagues than they were back in Japan. So seems like a pretty decent guy. A lot of interest from a lot of different teams. The Hawks in 2021 were 65 and 40, so he's been on some winning teams. He has been contributing to winning and has a long track record. Is finally ready to come to the States. I'm excited to see what he does. He is not quite as big as Darvish or Shohei. Darvish is 6'5", Shohei is 6'4". Both those guys have a little bit of a bigger body that I think works to their advantage in terms of their workload. Obviously, that's what you want in a lot of starters. Senga is 6 foot even, listed at 178 pounds. I think it should be fine. I don't know what to expect from him. These numbers are really impressive. We've seen a lot of really good starters come out of Japan the last few years. We saw Seiya Suzuki as a right fielder come out and play for the Cubs, and he had a fine season. Nothing too crazy. I think Suzuki was just a little bit younger than Senga, but I'm excited to see where he goes. If the Rangers do end up extending Perez or just retain him on a 1-year qualifying offer, the Rangers need one starting pitcher, and we're going to look at who I would very much like that starting pitcher to be, because he has some mutual interest. Right after this word from our sponsors. So if the Rangers did sign Senga, just to kind of wrap that thought up, I think that would be a really great signing. I'm not sure where he would slot into the rotation. My guess would be somewhere between what John Gray and Martin Perez would be. That is just my assumption. And ideally, I think the Rangers would want one of these top-end absolute horses at the highest end of their rotation to just be a dominant, maybe even Cy Young contender. But the Rangers obviously have expressed some interest there. And according to Jon Heyman, who I cannot see his actual tweets because I am blocked because I got a little overzealous defending my large adult son, Joseph Nicholas Gallo. So according to these people who are aggregating Jon Heyman, Jacob deGrom has let the Rangers know that he has interest in signing with them, which is just a delightful feeling. Just an absolutely delightful feeling. It's like when you're in middle school and you first start to like girls, and you find out that maybe you're not the most popular kid. Maybe you've had some losing seasons, but you used to be cool back in elementary school. But it's been a while since then. And you think, okay, well now the girls aren't going to like me. Well, you go into homecoming season, dating season, whatever the off-season equivalent is, and you find out that the prettiest girl at your school has a crush on you, and she would be open to going to the dance with you. Now that just got to send little flutters into your little heart, that, oh my gosh, this girl is just, everyone likes her. Everyone thinks she's so pretty and so great. That's Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom is the prettiest girl in the school for this free agent market. You get my message here, not trying to objectify Jacob deGrom, but objectively, if you look at his numbers, they are a little bit overwhelming. Might give you some heart palpitations. Go look at Jacob deGrom's Baseball Savant page and tell me you don't feel a little something stirring in your heart. It's absolutely beautiful, gorgeous, amazing, show-stopping, incredible. Never before seen anything like it. He is in the 100th percentile for strikeout rate, the 99th percentile of walk rate, 99th for whiff rate, top 3% in chase rate, fastball velocity, fastball spin rate, expected ERA, expected WOBA. It's just, oh my God, how could anyone be so amazing? That's what Jacob deGrom has been for the past, 5 years, basically. He has been absolutely incredible. Now, there are a lot of concerns with the injuries. What he's projected for next year is 101 innings, according to Baseball Reference, which, again, would be amazing as long as he's healthy for the playoffs, which the Rangers are hoping to get to next year. that would be just fine if the Rangers can get themselves to the playoffs, get a lot out of Jacob deGrom. But it's been a while since he has pitched a whole lot of innings. Back in 2020, he did throw 68 innings in the shortened season. That was 12 starts. He pitched over 200 innings every season from 2017 all the way to 2019. He has been an all-star 4 times. He has won the Cy Young once. And in 2021, he was an all-star that year, and he was on pace for an absolutely unbelievable, ungodly season. But injuries the last 2 years have really hampered him. In 2021, he had a 1.08 ERA. Let me say that again. 1.08 in 15 starts. 92 innings. That is not a small sample size. That is a huge sample size. He also had 146 strikeouts. He's had a Ks per 9 over 14 the last 2 years at 13.8 in 2020 in that shortened season where he finished third somehow in the Cy Young voting, and the guy who I least wanted to win it ended up winning that award. We're not going to talk about that guy, but he won back-to-back Cy Young the year before that. He has an ERA plus for his career of 1.55, a regular ERA of 2.52 in his career of 9 years. He is just absolutely insane, sensational. It's just the injuries, and that have really just been happening for the last couple of years that have hampered him. And before that, he had been pretty healthy, pitched over 140 innings every season before that shortened season from 2014 when he was a rookie and pitched 140 innings with a 2.69 ERA. He's only had an ERA over 3 in 3 of his 9 years. One of those was this year. He had a 3.04 ERA back in 2016. Somehow didn't make an all-star team that year. A 3.53 ERA. What a horrible year where he pitched 200 innings and had 239 strikeouts back in 2017. The guy has just been absolutely incredible. And by the way, that 3.53 ERA year, that was just horrible. He finished 8th in Cy Young voting. There's only been 1 year in his entire year since his rookie year that he didn't finish with Cy Young votes, and that was when he only pitched 148 innings with 3.04 ERA back in 2016. And my gosh, there's just a whole lot to dream on with this guy. He is going to be a little bit older. He is going to be 35 this year, but he has expressed that he has mutual interest with signing with the Rangers. That is incredible. And we talked about this, or I talked about this, I talked to you. You listened very patiently, and I appreciate you for that. But in yesterday's show, we discussed that the Mets are reportedly very wary about giving him 4 years. I think I would also be wary about giving him 4 years as well. 3 years is what I projected for around 41.6-ish million, which is about what the average annual value market is according to Spot Track for him. I think somewhere around that Scherzer type deal. Scherzer got 3 years for $130 million, which I think if my math is right, that's $43.33 million per year. He should get somewhere around that because Scherzer has been incredible for his career. He is a little bit older than deGrom, but he has shown a little bit more health the last few years. But Jacob deGrom has been one of the most amazing pitchers for basically a decade. And if the Rangers, if there's mutual interest there and they can feel comfortable giving that 4th year, I don't see them going 5. I don't think it would take 5. And I think a lot of teams are going to be hesitant to give him 4. But if there's interest from him and the Rangers are willing to pony up on the money, even if it doesn't work out, you could still totally forgive them for taking that risk for literally one of the best pitchers of his generation at this point. It has been amazing to watch. If you haven't watched any Jacob deGrom start, go look up some highlight reels and then do it while you're sitting down. I don't want you to pass out and fall over and hit your head or anything. But I mean, my God, just the fact that there's mutual interest is a huge credit to the Rangers, that a guy like this would be interested in going to the Rangers. I think it's going to be very, very tough to end up signing him. I don't know who else would be, at this point kind of desperate to throw that insane amount of money at him. And if the Mets aren't willing to go 4 years, which would be absolutely incredibly stupid for them not to, because their ownership group is the richest in baseball. And if you're not going to retain your homegrown 2-time Cy Young winner, then what in the heck are you even doing with all that money? And Mets fans might literally burn the entire city of New York to the ground. But if the Rangers could make that happen, that would be absolutely incredible. And I think that adding 4 pitchers might be the route, because again, it's the same thing with Kershaw. If the Rangers do end up signing Kershaw, it's just there's a certain amount of inning. I think I'd be more concerned with how much Kershaw is going to pitch versus deGrom. I think deGrom has got a little bit of bounce back in him. He doesn't have nearly as many, career innings on his frame as Clayton Kershaw does, and I'm pretty sure I want to say that he didn't really find his elite form until he kind of got to the Mets, and whatever they did to him, maybe it was a Tommy John and he found some velo. I can't remember exactly what happened, but he was not this highly vaunted, talented prospect. I mean, he only made his major league debut at age 26 and really came into his own at his age 27 season. So a little bit of a late bloomer, but he is what a bloom it has been. And if the Rangers could go get him, there is reason to be absolutely hyped out of your freaking mind that Jacob deGrom is even considering signing with the Texas Rangers. Would I rather have deGrom over Carlos Rodon? Probably, yeah. I think I would. I think you could count on Rodon being a little bit healthier. I think both those guys are absolutely insane. I think there's literally no way in the heckest of hecks that they could sign both of those guys, or even these two and Senga. But I think those 3 are going to be their top targets. Obviously, I think it goes deGrom, Rodon, then Senga. And I don't think the Rangers are going to have a lot of interest in Justin Verlander. I think their efforts are focused elsewhere. I think Kershaw, at this point, it's not going to be a primary focus. If he wants to come to Texas, then he'll come to Texas. If not, he's going to go back to the Dodgers. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of convincing to be done. I think only Kershaw can make up his own mind. And as good as a salesman as Chris Young has been so far in his young tenure in the front office, I don't think that anybody is making that decision for Kershaw. It's just going to be a decision that Kershaw and his family makes of if or when he wants to come to Texas and maybe hang it up as a Texas Ranger, or if he wants to stay a Dodger for his entire career, because that would also be pretty cool. And you can't really begrudge him for wanting to go back to a team that won more than 110 games this year. You really can't begrudge him of wanting to do that. But some very, very exciting news on deGrom. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to have a lot about whatever the Rangers decide to do with Martin Perez, a little bit more about deGrom and what the injuries are and how much concern there is. Hopefully we'll do a little bit of a crossover show with Locked On Mets, talking about him, talking about Nimmo, and which of these lovely free agents the Rangers could steal from those 101 win Mets. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. It is got the games that matter the most. The biggest stories in sports go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.